Right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The 5 Pillars of Social Selling. I'm Michael Idinopoulos. I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at PeopleLinks. I'm going to kick things off with a very brief introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful presenters. Our philosophy here at PeopleLinks is social selling made easy. That's a description of our product, which we'll talk very briefly towards the end of the webinar. It also describes the training that we do with our corporate clients, and more to the point, it describes learning sessions like the one that we're doing today. We're on a mission to help enterprises unlock the enormous sales and marketing value that we see as being inherent in their employees' use of social media. And we've got a couple of folks here who are more qualified than just about anyone else in the world to help us do that. Our featured speaker today is Jill Rowley, and we are super lucky to have her. For those of you who don't know Jill, she is truly the most visible and I would say the most effective social selling evangelist in the world. For those of you who have seen her at live events, you may remember her as the woman in the purple cape. I don't know whether Jill is wearing a purple cape right now or not, but it's a very memorable sight for those of you who haven't seen it. Jill was the top performing salesperson at Eloqua, and then after Oracle's acquisition of Eloqua, she traveled the globe training Oracle's 20,000 sales reps on social selling and social selling best practices. And today, she travels from client to client delivering keynotes and workshops on social selling best practices. A recent study ranked her as number 3 on the list of top social sellers, but if you ask me, that's too low a ranking. I think she's number 1. So she's our featured speaker, and in addition to Jill, we have Bernie Borges, who is the CEO of Find and Convert, which is a digital marketing agency serving B2B clients. Bernie is also the host of the Social Business Engine digital TV show and podcast, which you can find online. It's a terrific resource, in particular for case studies on social business. Bernie is kind of making the rounds doing sit-down interviews with many of the brightest lights in social sales and marketing. His recent guests include people like Jill, as well as Joe Palizzi and Robert Rose from Content Marketing Institute, Michael Stelzner from Social Media Examiner, and many others. So those are terrific podcasts and videos. I strongly encourage you to check them out. So let's talk about logistics briefly. I encourage everyone to tweet during today's webinar. Please use the hashtag you see on your screen, which is hashtag social selling, all one word. You can post your questions there. You can also post them in the chat pane here in WebEx if you're not on Twitter. Let's see, and we'll be monitoring the Twitter during the webinar. We'll address as many of the questions as we can as time permits toward the end of the webinar. I see we've got one person who's having trouble hearing. If you're having trouble with the audio, please let us know in the chat pane, although if you're having trouble with the audio, you probably didn't hear that. Let me go to the next slide. So just a quick heads up, after today's webinar, we will be sending out a link so you can share it with colleagues who couldn't attend. It's a link to the playback. We're also, with that email, going to be asking a few questions about social selling. I want to be clear that our goal in that is to gather research. And of course, we will share the findings with everyone who responds to the survey. So by responding to the survey, you ensure that you get to see the results. And to give you a little extra motivation to answer the survey, when you respond to it, you will be entered to win a free hour-long LinkedIn profile makeover with one of the social business strategists here at PeopleLinks. That's a live screen share and voice session that we do that our customers absolutely adore. So watch for that email in your inbox. It'll come in the next couple of days. Now let's talk about the agenda. So we've got a few really fantastic topics that we're going to be addressing. The first one is how the B2B buying process has changed. Jill is going to be taking us through some really impressive data that shows that it has changed enormously, and that means that social selling has become incredibly important. and Jill will talk more about why that is. And then she'll get into the title of the webinar, The 5 Pillars of Social Selling, what they are and how to do them. And then finally, we're going to have Bernie Borges talk about the organizational element of all of this. How do you enable an organization to embrace social selling, whether it's at the team level, at the division level, or even at the enterprise level? Now, just one heads up, I know we've been talking a lot about social selling, and I want to be clear that this webinar is not just for people who have the word sales on their business card. We have literally several hundred people who have already joined in. I think we're going to be getting even more. And you're from many different industries. Some of you are sales reps and sales managers. Some of you are in marketing. Some of you are in completely different areas. So I just want to be clear, even if you're not a quota-carrying sales professional or account manager or a sales manager, please understand that these principles apply to pretty much anyone who is customer-facing in a company and anyone who has responsibility for customer-facing personnel. So, with all that said, I'm now going to turn it over to the #1, at least in my book and in our hearts, the #1 social selling professional in the world, Ms. Jill Rowley. Jill, over to you.
Thanks, Michael. I am super excited to be here today, and we are going to talk about the why, the what, and the how to do social selling. And it's really important that we start with the why. Mindset shift, then new skills, then enabling tools. That's the recipe for success. We know that beliefs lead to our behaviors, and so if we believe that social selling is what is going to help us make our revenue number, then we will behave in a way that supports us in doing so. So there are really 2 reasons why. Why are we going to do social selling? The first is the buying process has changed. We are living in the age of the customer. We are no longer living in the age of the seller. And buyers are out there having learning parties, and they are not inviting your sales professionals to the party. And so the data shows that 92% of B2B buyers start their search on the web. They open up Google and type into Google what information they need to know. 57 to 70% of the B2B buying process is done prior to the buyer engaging with sales. And that's because the buyer doesn't want to be sold to. And today, buyers have a choice. Buyers also have voice. And so buyers are going out there and they're getting self-educated because they don't want to be another prospect on your prospect list. They want to be educated and informed. They want value. They want insights, and they can get that without you. Why is social selling so important? Well, your buyers are social. I say be where your buyers are, offline at events, online in social networks, hashtag all the time. Your buyers are social, you need to be social. 82% of the world's online population can be reached via social networks. This is global. Indonesia, India, Singapore, in Latin America, Brazil. They're buyers. Buyers are on the web and they're in social networks in every geographic region. And the great thing about social, guess what? 24/7, 365 days a year. Social doesn't sleep, and social knows 0 geographic boundaries. The power of peer-to-peer has never been greater. And the news flash for companies is that buyers don't trust your brand. They don't trust your marketing messages. They don't trust your advertisements. They don't have to. They trust you at about 33%, your messaging and your marketing and your advertisements. Guess who they trust? Other buyers. Power to the people, power to the people. We are living in the age of the customer where the buyer is self-educating using search engines and social networks. I was on a call 2 days ago with a VP at SAP, and I looked at her LinkedIn profile, and she had led the migration from Eloqua to Marketo. I spent 11 years building the marketing automation space as a sales professional at Eloqua. And when I looked at her profile on LinkedIn and I read that she led the migration from Eloqua to Marketo, I realized that there are people out there putting that information on their social profiles. And what that means for buyers is they don't come to the sales rep for references because they know what they're going to get from the sales rep. They're going to get the scripted reference. They go to their social network and they do a search on LinkedIn, Marketo Eloqua, and they find 2,000 plus people who have experience with both platforms. And that's where the trust lies, buyer to buyer. So your best salespeople are your customer advocates. And it's no longer good enough to always be closing. You have to always be connecting and cultivating your customers into advocates, because your best salespeople are your advocates, because that is who your buyers trust. The benefits, this is the second reason, and this is secondary to the fact that buyers have changed, you have to change, you adapt, you evolve, or you will be replaced. I'm not kidding. And the second reason to do it is because it works. The data's in. Before I joined Oracle to design, deploy, and drive adoption of Oracle's global social selling program, I spent 2 quarters doing research. I read every report, every article, every blog post. I listened to every podcast I could on the topic of social selling. I've become an expert via reading information and speaking with people who are actually leading the charge within their organizations. And this report from Aberdeen Group shows that teams and people who embrace and adopt and leverage social selling, the reps are achieving quota. They're improving their forecast accuracy. Renewal rates are improved. So the data is in. Not only do you have to, but you want to, because it's going to help you build your pipeline with qualified opportunities and crush your quota. I developed a framework for social selling. And this is really because I believe that social selling is a methodology. It's a process. And it gets embedded in your current methodology and process. It gets layered in. But to have a conversation to operationalize and scale social selling in a team environment, I had to develop really a framework. And so let's get started with the 5 pillars of the social selling framework. Create a personal brand. That's step number 1. Whether you're in sales, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in engineering, whether you're in HR, whether you're in finance, every single employee should be building and investing in their personal brand. And that can be done via your social networks. LinkedIn isn't where you put your online resume. It's where you build your digital reputation. And so creating that personal brand on your social networks, where your buyers are. Again, be where your buyers are, offline, online, hashtag all the time. I sell in a B2B environment. I'm not finding many of my buyers on Pinterest and on Instagram. And if they are there, I'm not finding that they want to have a business conversation with me on those channels. So I've really optimized the networks where my buyers are, and they're on LinkedIn, they're on Twitter, they're on SlideShare, and they're on YouTube. So number one, create the personal brand. Number two, now that you've got a buyer-centric social profile, ABC, always be connecting. Business cards are LinkedIn connections. They're new people to follow on Twitter. I hashtag socially surround not only the buyer, the buying committee, but the sphere of influence of those buyers and that buying committee. Who does my buyer already trust? Where do they already learn? To whom are they already connected? Who are they following on Twitter? And I socially surround the people who are influencing my buyers' thinking and their decision making. Number three, content is the currency of the modern sales professional. The modern sales professional uses content to be where her buyers are during the learning party, to be educating, not pitchy, pitchy, selly, selly, using content to be relevant, to inform, to engage with insights. And so content is the currency not only of the modern marketer, but of the modern sales professional. Number four, listen. Listen to the social conversation. Listen for leads. As a sales rep at Eloqua, I had Hootsuite and TweetDeck set up. I had columns where I would listen across the social web for any mention of marketing automation, any mention of lead nurturing, any mention of lead scoring, any mention of marketing ROI, any mention of Eloqua, my company, any mention of Marketo, my biggest competitor. So I was listening, and when I saw and heard someone asking for anyone who knows of any great companies doing great lead nurturing programs, I would link to case studies or award-winning, marquee award-winning customers doing lead nurturing. I wouldn't pitch the product. I wouldn't talk about features. I would just put a link to exactly what that person had been asking for, companies doing great things in lead nurturing. And as a rep at Eloqua, I had tons of customers doing great things in lead nurturing, and we built a website to honor our customers who were winning awards for what they were doing, and I would listen and then I would engage in a non-salesy way. And then the fifth pillar is measure what matters. And this is probably one of the tougher areas because a lot of this is brand new, and we've got to change the things that we measure. We've got to change the tools that we're using, and I'll talk a little bit more about measure what matters as we go through the presentation. Use, again, LinkedIn as your digital reputation. I actually published a blog post this morning, Are You a LinkedIn Quota Crusher? And really, does your LinkedIn profile talk about President's Club 2009, President's Club 2010, President's Club 2011, 120% of quota, 195% of quota? Guess what? People buy from people they know, they like, they trust. Nobody likes or trusts the quota crusher. You really want to think about the customer coming to your LinkedIn profile, the potential customer, the one you're trying to cold call, unsolicited emails, you're trying to get them to take a meeting with you, and they're going to your LinkedIn profile to see what's in it for them. And if all they see is quota crusher, President's Club winner, expert negotiator, that buyer has a choice, and a choice to not engage with you. So use the right tone, add rich content, showcase your skills. That's what your LinkedIn profile is all about. Search results. LinkedIn profiles that have a photo get 7x more views. Not only that have a photo, but a professional photo. This isn't your, where you have your photo of you and your dogs or you in your wedding dress. That's for Facebook. This is professional. So have a photo, have a professional photo, and make it public as well. If you don't make your photo public, this is how you look in a search result. The nameless, faceless, actually you've got a name, sorry, the faceless a person on LinkedIn. You want to have a photo, and you want to have a professional photo. Headlines. This is a way to differentiate yourself. Right? So instead of account executive at ABC Software Company, sales rep at ABC Software Company, actually put the headline as your value statement. I like this one. Product manager that marries technical and business jargon for happily ever after. I'm getting a sense of Samson's personality as well. What Samson has also done on his LinkedIn profile is he shortened his LinkedIn URL. I have my LinkedIn URL on my business cards. And so if I had lots of random letters and numbers at the end of my LinkedIn profile, that wouldn't be a good thing to print on my business card. So you can go in and you can edit and shorten your URL. Twitter, it's probably one of the most underutilized, most misunderstood network. Twitter is not where you talk about the turkey sandwich you had for lunch. Twitter is where you engage in a business conversation, where you go for information, for research, for insights, and you engage in Twitter, in a Twitter conversation. And let me tell you, if Carl Self follows me on Twitter and I see Carl as an egghead and that Carl is following 2 people and has 5 followers, and this is what Carl is about, I'm not going to follow Carl back. So hashtag no eggheads allowed. This is the default image when you create a Twitter profile. Update a professional photo and describe yourself. Put a link to your LinkedIn profile so that they go from your Twitter to your LinkedIn. Here's my Twitter account. I'm using Twitter for another place to brand myself. You can see these are some of my favorite sales and marketing, culture, leadership, women in business books. These are right behind me on my shelf in my office. And I've created, I have consistent branding now across my LinkedIn, my Twitter, and my Facebook accounts. And this is the background image that I'm using across all of my social networks. I describe myself, founder and chief evangelist, and I talk about what I stand for so people can get to know me, hopefully to like me, and ultimately to trust me, because people buy from people they know, they like, they trust. Recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. Don't sell yourself. Your recommendations do the selling for you. They establish your credibility. Your recommendations earn you trust. And so I actually do an upfront contract with my customers. And I say, look, I am a social selling evangelist. I have to sip my own champagne. I have to practice what I preach. And if I come to your global sales kickoff for 20,000 salespeople or 200 salespeople, or I do a workshop for 20 of your sales and marketing employees, would you be, and I knock it out of the park. Let's go there, right? I don't do a crappy job. I do an excellent job, and I provide value. And if I do that, would you be willing to write a recommendation for me on LinkedIn? Because that's going to help me earn new customers. And so that upfront contract of getting a recommendation on your LinkedIn profile is a good tip. I hopefully will yield some results for you. I already talked about the branding and optimizing for the buyer, not the recruiter. This cannot be overlooked, and this is for every single employee. There are great resources out there. Go do a Google search on personal branding, and you'll find incredible resources, free resources to help you with that personal branding exercise. Always be connecting, not closing. Nobody wants to be sold to. No one's ever wanted to be sold to. Today they have a choice. And so instead of closing, connecting, Porter Gale wrote the book, Your Network is Your Net Worth. And you are never too young to be building your network. My 20-year-old son is interning at a bank this summer. Every person at that bank with whom he works should be in his LinkedIn network, because his network will become his net worth. And again, you're never too young to start. If you go to events and you get, I've got like stacks of business cards, those are LinkedIn connections. If you go to an event and you meet a speaker Connect with them on LinkedIn. Compliment them on their presentation. Actually, do it in advance of the event. Find out who the influential speakers are and say, I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation on the topic of X. I'm really excited to learn more about Y. I'd be honored to be in your network and delighted to have you in mine. That will stand out. That will cut through the clutter. That's a whole lot better than the generic LinkedIn invite. Since you're someone I trust, let me add you to my network and start spamming you. No. Generic LinkedIn invites, you know what they are? They're hashtag social stupid. They're hashtag just plain lazy. Don't do it again. We've all done it. I've done it. I'm guilty. The mobile app in LinkedIn doesn't even tell you you're getting ready to do hashtag social stupid or hashtag just plain lazy. It allows you to send generic LinkedIn invites. So don't use the mobile app to send LinkedIn invites. Here's my profile on LinkedIn, and I'm going to invite you now at this point in the webinar to invite me to connect. Practice the art of a LinkedIn invite. I'm going to invite you to follow me on Twitter, hashtag socially surround me, and I will hashtag socially surround you back. And you can see my headline. I want people to know when they visit my profile what I can do for them. I'm a social selling evangelist. I'm a modern marketing expert. I'm a keynote speaker, workshop leader, change agent. And I went to the University of Virginia, Wahoo Wah, UVA, and they can find out how to contact me. I try to keep this pretty clean in terms of the content that I'm sharing. Oh, my heavens to Betsy, good golly, Miss Molly. I cannot tell you how valuable this feature within LinkedIn is. I demoed it live on a webinar yesterday, and the audience went wild. This is like, again, so I don't understand why LinkedIn isn't doing a better job showcasing this, because I went and I did a search on UVA, and of the 300 million plus members on LinkedIn, 104,492 of them went to UVA. And then what I do is I say, okay, I'm going to narrow that down to my target audience. So the people who buy from me are in marketing, they're in sales enablement, and they're chief learning officers. And so I narrow that down to like the 20,000 people that went to UVA who are in my target audience. And then I say, you know what, I want to not travel as much for a couple of months because my kids, I got 4 kids, and my husband needs a wife. I need a wife too, for anyone know one. I need a wife. And so I narrow that down. I want to stay in the Bay Area. I want to do some networking in the Bay Area. I don't want to get on planes for a couple months. And so then I get down to the 2,000 people who are in sales and marketing and sales enablement and chief learning officers in the Bay Area. And then I say, you know what, my real target audience, my sweet spot is companies in tech. They're B2B companies. They're on the larger side. And so I narrow that down, and all of a sudden I have a list of 200 people with whom I should be doing the I too went to UVA, Wahoo Wah. I too am in the Bay Area and have a passion for sales and marketing. I'd be honored to be in your network and delighted to be in yours. So this is a function and a feature that is so overlooked and so underutilized, and I'm just so delighted to share this with you. Not only can I do this with UVA, my husband, Smarty Pants Rowley, Philip Smarty Pants Rowley, went to Stanford, and holy bake off, I want to be connected to all the influential people who went to Stanford. So I use this, I apply the same technique and the same filtering to Stanford. And then my not so smarty pants kids, sorry boys, Philip and Jack, they go to ASU, Arizona State University. Party on, Sun Devils. And no disrespect to anyone who went to ASU. I just realized that probably wasn't a very smart thing to say. But I can use their network, right? So I can go and I can filter, and I can say, my boys go to ASU, go Sun Devils. And so this is a way to find your buyers, listen, relate, connect, engage, and then ultimately amplify your buyers. And using this alumni network is just so it's available and it's free for everybody. Everybody. Okay. Someone asked about where the screen was. I'll get to the questions in a bit. LinkedIn groups. Be where your buyers are. Offline, online, hashtag all the time. Your buyers are in groups. Go join groups and don't be pitchy, selly. Be helpful. Engage with insights. Provide value. This is called networking, and it's building relationships, and nobody gets married on the first date, right? This is work. So don't go for the close in your LinkedIn invite to connect. I will actually rat you out. If you, and I blogged about this too, if you are using social as another channel for spam, I will rat you out. This is not taking old school techniques of spam and applying them to new school channels. Social selling isn't modern trickery. So I had a woman, I don't even know she's real, send me a generic LinkedIn invite to connect. I actually accepted because my philosophy is, given what I do, is if I can add value to you or you can add value to me, I will connect with you. And so I accepted. Within 50 minutes, I received from her pitchy, selly, generic email that wasn't personalized. It wasn't relevant. It was pitching me on services that I would never buy. And then she went on to endorse me for 5 skills. I've never met this woman. I've never interacted with this woman. That is social spam. That is modern trickery, and that is wrong. So you've got to be your authentic self. There's no substitute for trust. Join groups, see where your buyers are. Content is the currency of the modern sales professional, and I use content. And if all I ever did was share my content and promote my content, Joe Rowley hashtag social selling, Joe Rowley hashtag social selling, Joe Rowley hashtag social selling, how annoying would that be? Annoying. So I say, I'm down with OPC. Yeah, you know me. I'm down with other people's content. And whose content am I down with? I'm down with the content from the other experts in social selling. I'm down with the content from the practitioners who are out there doing social selling. So I'm down with OPC. I'm sharing other people's content. I share People Links content. They create great content. I can't create enough content to fill the world with enough information. So I use OPC. And then you know what? That makes People Links like me more. That makes Hootsuite like me more. That makes HubSpot like me more. That makes the analysts and the experts who cover this space like me more because I'm amplifying their content. So get down with OPC. Yeah, you know me, other people's content. And don't just put your content out there. Engage with other people's content. I'll tell you a story. My husband every morning, oh God love him, he brings me my coffee in bed. And he goes out to the driveway and he gets the Wall Street Journal. And he's reading the Wall Street Journal in bed. And there I am with my coffee and my iPad, and I'm scrolling through my LinkedIn homepage. And I'm looking at what people in my network are sharing, and I'm engaging, right? I'm liking, I'm commenting, I'm sharing their posts. Same thing on Twitter. This isn't just a new channel for me to shout and promote my stuff. It's for me to engage with other people's content. All right, I'm running out of time, and I've got to help you break through the clutter. We all have too many voicemails in our inbox. We all have too many unsolicited emails coming into our inboxes, and social is just a new channel and a new way to hopefully cut through the clutter of your buyers. Listening. I almost want to flip the order of my framework, that this should be first, but I think the personal branding aspect is so important. And the listening is a little bit harder. It does require some pretty significant change in not only your behavior, but potentially in territory models. And so what I do encourage you, go do a Google search, social listening for leads. IBM is doing some great work in this area. EMC, actually Bernie, did a podcast with Todd Forsyth, and they're doing some really interesting thing with listening. But go out there and start to do some listening for some leads. I'm going to talk about Twitter lists. So I use a tool called Little Bird, and it's getlittlebird.com, and this makes me look way smarter than I am. And so I use this tool to create influencer list, Twitter influencer list. And I do this for my clients on behalf of my clients. Again, I work with a lot of big companies, VMware, EMC, Symantec, GE, Mitel, lots of great big companies, SAP, Salesforce.com, and I create Twitter influencer lists. And so if the customer that I'm working with is in big data and they sell big data, I help them create these influencer lists of who's who in the big data analytics zoo, who's influential. And so this gives them people that they can follow. And this just really helps you socially surround the influencers. When you're on Twitter, make sure, again, you've got a good profile and a photo because people aren't going to follow the egghead. I'm wrapping up, measure what matters. Initially, it's a lot easier to measure the vanity metrics. I call them vanity metrics, right? I'm a social networking addict. I have 11,312 connections on LinkedIn. I have 16,522 followers on Twitter. So what? If that isn't helping build pipeline and driving revenue, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what matters in sales is the revenue number. And there is a more modern way to make that number, but that is ultimately what matters. And so with that, I'm actually going to let Bernie and Michael go back into the presentation mode, and then we'll come back with some Q&A.
Thank you, Jill. This is Bernie Borges. Jill, thanks so much for the 5 pillars. So let's go ahead and look at how we make those 5 pillars of social selling happen within your organization. Okay, there we go. So looking at social selling from a management perspective, we have to start with the current state. In most cases, we see that the current state really is not much more than random acts of social selling. Jill kind of gave some examples of that. It's the periodic reminder from the head of social sales to the team to go on LinkedIn and do some prospecting without any training or any plan. And unfortunately, also, like Jill covered, that can result in what I call the bull in a china shop situation, most often in the form of spamming people on LinkedIn. And that is just so counterproductive. But the desired future state is to develop a social selling strategy. So let's look at the pillars of a social selling strategy. The 4 pillars of a social selling strategy are culture, people, process, and technology. Now, culture starts with support from the C-suite, or at least from the top-ranking sales executives who authentically embrace, emphasis on authentically embrace social selling with a willingness to implement the best practices that Jill just covered. Now, in the interest of time, we can only cover people, process, and technology in a little bit of detail, but we actually talked about maybe even holding a webinar just on these 4 pillars in the future. So if that interests you, please let us know, because we talked about that. So, people. The people pillar is all about demonstrating to the sales team a serious willingness, and I mean a serious willingness, to invest in the best practices that Jill covered here today. By demonstrating this willingness to invest in your people, and as Michael said at the outset, it's not just your salespeople, but by demonstrating that willingness to invest, an amazing thing happens. The people receive it as an employee benefit. But unlike other employee benefits, this one has a measurable and direct impact on the company's sales performance. Now, employees receive this investment as a benefit because it's not forced on them. Employees opt into the program willingly. You don't ask employees to compromise privacy in any way, which is a common fear. And the approach is fully secure, so you can take away the biggest fears that employees typically have when suggesting that they become part of your social selling team. Now, like anything that we do in business, the process takes some planning. Now remember, regardless of the employee's title, as I mentioned a moment ago, there is some training that's involved. The employee's social profile needs to be optimized. In some cases, the employee's online presence is a brand risk or a liability, and it needs to be converted to a brand asset. Employees need to learn how to appropriately share and engage in social channels, even if that's first thing in the morning with a cup of coffee, like Jill explained she does in the morning. Now, there's also an element of integration with other systems, such as CRM and marketing automation systems, for a closed-loop management perspective. There's also an element of listening, which Jill also covered in the 5 pillars. And then finally, the payoff is recognizing when opportunities, real opportunities exist, so that you avoid the common mistake of unsocial selling, which is what happens when a brand risk behaves outside the etiquette of the 5 pillars of social selling. So now we get to technology, and Michael's going to pick it up from here.
Thanks, Bernie. I will talk about technology in a second, but first a quick question. Please let us know your answer in Twitter. Am I the only one who is reminded of a young Casey Kasem when I hear Bernie Borges present? Let us know on Twitter if you share that impression. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about technology. To Bernie's point, there's a lot of process that's involved in doing social selling effectively, at least at enterprise scale. If you're one person, if you're 2 people, maybe even if you're a team of, let's say, 5 sales reps, you may be able to do this without a whole lot of process. But as soon as you start talking about anything that approaches enterprise scale, there's a lot of process to be managed in order to do it consistently and in order to do things like measure what matters, the way Jill was talking about. So I'm going to show you a few screens. This is the PeopleLinks product, so full disclosure, we're showing our own product. I'm not giving you the full pitch, but I do want to give you a sense of how technology is uniquely qualified to help make those processes routine and scalable and measurable. So just to show you a few of the things that we do in the PeopleLinks product, one is we offer step-by-step profile guidance so that an individual rep can come in and literally have almost a kind of a wizard experience where they're walked through exactly the things that they need to do in order to be more effective on their profile. And this covers a lot of the things that, that Jill was talking about with respect to profile quality. So we tell them exactly what they need to do and also give them a link directly into LinkedIn or Twitter or Salesforce or whatever underlying system they need to be using in order to take that action. Another thing, once you get beyond the branded profile, is this whole issue of engagement and content sharing. And what we've found from working with lots and lots of different companies is that the single biggest thing that holds people back from sharing content is that they're not sure what they should be sharing and what they're allowed to share. So I may have an article that I find interesting, but maybe I'm worried that I'm not supposed to share it, or that it might somehow reflect negatively on my brand, or that there's a reference to a competitor that I had missed. All of those kinds of concerns are the things that prevent employees from sharing content. So what technology is able to do is make it really easy for somebody in marketing to source content that is helpful, work with groups like compliance to make sure that that content is kosher and approved for sharing, and then push it out via the technology tools to the end employees, who are then in a position to say, okay, this sounds like something that my network would be interested in. I'm going to share this one. And with one click of a button, it gets shared. We talked a lot about how to integrate this into business process. Obviously, in most larger organizations, business process is all about CRM and making sure that the reps are going into the CRM and doing the things that they need to do. And that's why we've basically brought social selling into the CRM experience with this feature that we just announced, which is integration into Salesforce. So again, we're not the only product on the market. It's not the only way to do it, but what we're trying to do here is to integrate social into the core selling processes and tools that reps are already using. And then finally, gamification. Adoption is so important. What we're really talking about here is behavior change. We're trying to get reps who are used to a particular set of behaviors and actions and processes to do things differently. And anytime you're talking about behavior change, you have to win over the hearts and minds of the people that you're working with. So we've introduced an element of gamification into the process so that people can actually quantify the impact that they're having on the pipeline, on web traffic, on deals, and then we've made that transparent in a way that's sort of fun and competitive and gets people's juices flowing. So that's sort of how the PeopleLinks tool works. If you're curious about kind of are you on the bleeding edge if you start doing this, I can tell you, you are in very, very good company. Many of the top brands in the world are working with social selling tools, have launched social selling programs. Just to give you a couple of examples, Prudential is an example of a company that actually sourced a $650 million RFP, literally, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, literally because one of their account managers went through a social selling program, updated her LinkedIn profile. That triggered an alert which was seen by a former client of hers who then reached out and invited her to participate in this open RFP that the company hadn't even been aware of. Another great example is Comcast. Their business unit is aggressively sharing content, and what they're discovering is that employee shared content from their team is generating on average, and again, these are actual statistics, on average 27 click-throughs per share. So some pretty phenomenal results, especially when you start thinking about the conversion of click-throughs to deal pipeline and the ways that they were able to track that. Very, very exciting results. That's kind of it in terms of the presentation of the main content. Before we open the floor up for questions, and we have a lot of them, I just want to remind everyone we will be sending out an email over the next couple of days with a link to the webinar playback and to the survey that is, again, it's not a selling survey. We're just trying to learn, and by filling it out, you get access to the survey results as well as a chance to win a free LinkedIn profile makeover. So let's take some of your questions, and as I said, we have quite a few of them. Let me start with one from Lauren, and this is for Jill. Lauren is writing, I consistently hear pushback that the salespeople don't have time. What is your response to them, especially those with less digital proficiency? So Jill, what do you think about that?
I think, I think we're all maxed out, and we're all busy, and we all lack time. You've got to unlearn things that you're doing, and you have to learn to do new things. And you know what? I don't have time to go to the gym. Well, guess what? I'm not going to lose weight if I don't. So, what they have to see is how this will help them meet their revenue targets. And I've actually talked publicly about social selling and even just modern customer engagement where you're not selling and you're serving, you're not selling and you're helping. It really does require a longer term view of the relationship with the customer. And, it's tough. It's really tough for big companies, especially who are older and set in their ways and have not hundreds or tens of people to mobilize, but thousands and tens of thousands of people. And, also they're public companies and Wall Street isn't going to wait. And so it is tough, but it's not a choice. And one of the foremost thought leaders on social business is a guy named Brian Solis, B-R-I-A-N-S-O-L-I-S. And he has a book. It's called What's the Future of Business? Changing the Way Businesses Create Experiences. It's a great, fabulous book. The book is an experience. It's beautiful. He's got a bunch of it on SlideShare, so you can go to slideshare.net and you can get the What's the Future of Business SlideShare. And he also has an article on digital Darwinism. And he has some pretty fascinating stats about the number of companies that were in the Fortune 500 that are no longer in the Fortune 500 because they did not adapt. They did not evolve. And they'll either die, just completely go away, or be replaced. And so reps who say they don't have time, they just haven't had their aha or their oh shit moment. And it's up to you to help them see the path. And then once they have that mindset and they believe that social is a way to be where their buyers are, and to engage in a modern way and build authentic relationships based on trust, then they will behave differently. But that's why I get paid so much money to do keynote speeches at sales kickoffs and trainings, is because the reps need the aha or the oh shit moment that they have to adapt and evolve and change, or they won't. If you just approach this as, we're going to teach you how to use LinkedIn, that's not effective. You've got to map it to what they care about and how they're measured.
If I could just add quickly to that, this is Bernie. What I would say is, and I mean no disrespect to the person that asked the question, but that question is code for either I don't want to change or I don't know how to do this. So the I don't want to change part comes back to motivating them. As Jill said at the beginning of the presentation, people's behaviors are driven by their motivation. And then the I don't know how to do it is a function of training. So if you address one or both of those, then you can really affect or impact that question or that objection.
Great. Thank you both. I should say, as Jill was doing her presentation, the main part of her presentation, I was jotting down memorable Jill Rowley-isms. And I'm just going to share the top three. Number 3 on my list is Holy Bake Off. Number 2 is Pitchy Pitchy Selly Selly. And number 1, the most memorable Jill Rowley-ism, hashtag just plain stupid. All right, let's go on.
I think we need T-shirts, Michael. We need T-shirts with those. And instead, I think the profile makeover is, I would be dying. If you got your aha or oh shit moment and you needed a makeover, this makeover that they're giving away is worth a lot. And I went around to Symantec's global sales kickoff in their North America, and we gave a bunch of these makeovers away to the Symantec salespeople, and they were literally like fighting over them. But I think we need T-shirts too. So I challenge you, Michael, to do T-shirts with those Jill Rowley-isms.
Yeah, I double dare Michael.
Maybe we should do capes. All right. Next
By the
question.
Way, did we ever find out if Jill's wearing her cape right now?
I'm glad we don't have the video portion going today.
Okay. All right. I digress. Sorry.
All right. Next question, and this could be for Jill or for Bernie. Be curious if you have the same answer. Do you recommend getting LinkedIn Premium?
I'll
Jill,
start.
Okay,
I mean,
go ahead.
If you're not using the free version, then no. So start with the basics. And then, yeah, the premium version, it's nice. It's got lots more functionality. And in particular, their Sales Navigator, which is more for teams. And what it does is it exposes the relationships that exist in a team selling environment. And so, your SVP has relationships with people that you could be leveraging. And TeamLink makes that really obvious and easy. So, I mean, there's a ton of value in the premium versions, but start with the basics. And if you're not using the basics, then you don't deserve the premium version. That's my approach.
Yeah, and actually, I answered my own question a while ago when I simply hit the limits of the free version. Once I hit the limits, and in order for me to conduct more extensive searches and save more searches and start sending in-mails, which is LinkedIn's version of sending a private email to someone, and LinkedIn guarantees that email will be delivered to that person. It doesn't guarantee they'll open it, but it guarantees that they will receive it. So the point is, once I started hitting the limits of the free version, then I really didn't have much choice if I wanted to get to the next level of how I was using LinkedIn. So that's really how I think the question is usually best answered. When you hit the limits of the free version, that's when you know, pull out your credit card and go to the next level.
Awesome. Thank you. And just an update on my earlier survey question, the Twitter sphere agrees, Bernie, that you do sound like a young Casey Kasem. But I should qualify that by saying we have not yet heard from Ryan Seacrest.
Yeah.
And I think his opinion will be significant here. All right. So next question is from John to Bernie or Jill. How much time on average should I carve out to keep on top of social selling?
Yeah, so actually I partner with a company that delivers social selling training. I love People Links because it's platform plus training. And I love People Links because it starts with a personal brand, and it really operationalizes and scales, updating your entire sales and sales engineering and even employee profiles to be buyer-centric. From a training perspective, really in terms of becoming proficient, you can get this down to 30 to 60 minutes a day potentially. But I think it also is an ebb and flow. I noticed when I was I carried a quota I was on quota for 13 years at Salesforce.com and Eloqua. My social activity would ebb and flow based on where I was in the quarter and what I had going on. But always, every day, every morning, LinkedIn was open as a browser, Twitter was open, Hootsuite, TweetDeck, maybe not be open later in the cycle because I had to do deal progression. So one of the other things I would always do as a rep is every day, every deal. Every day, every deal. I would look at my pipeline and I would say, why isn't this customer ready to buy? And who within the customer base needs more education and knowledge? And so I would go through every day, every deal, and I would say, how can I use social to find out more about this buyer or learn more about what their objections might be, and so I make social already do, and sometimes you have to ebb and flow based on competing priorities, but you should be able to get it down to sometimes 30, 60 minutes in terms of time.
My thought is actually a little bit different, Jill. I don't look at social selling as a discrete activity like going to the gym. That's a discrete activity. I go there, I spend a certain amount of time there, and then I leave. To me, social selling is integrated into what I do throughout the day. And by the way, the day is just every moment that I'm awake. It's not just 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So I don't really think about how much time I spend at it because it's not discrete. It's integrated into what I'm doing throughout my day. So it might be a minute here, 5 minutes there, 30 minutes there, 10 minutes there, spread throughout the day. What does that all add up to? Frankly, I've never tracked it, but it's probably in the range of 30 minutes to maybe 2 hours is kind of the range. As long as it's all productive, I'm not sweating it.
Great. And on that note, I'm afraid we are going to have to close it because we're at the top of the hour. But on behalf of People Links, first of all, I want to thank Jill Rowley and Bernie Borges for your contributions. I thought this was a fantastic session. I know I learned a lot. I think a lot of people on the call learned a lot, and we've got a ton of questions that we haven't been able to get to. If you want to stick around, we will answer them in the chat channel. But I'm going to gavel us to a close here. I want to thank everyone else who joined for attending. I hope you are taking away a lot to think about with respect to your social selling and, in general, your B2B social business strategy. And I encourage you to watch your email over the next couple of days for the link to the playback and the survey. And although I'm not Bernie Borges or Casey Kasem, I will close the webinar with these unforgettable words: keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a great day.